Not that you would switch jobs because someone else will pay you twice as much, but you will be worth twice as much every single year. So just be ready for that. I thought today, because you asked, how do I convince my boss in an ethical way so that you have more authority, so they're more likely to go along with your decision? When I started out 30 years ago, I was a young adult and I had to convince other bosses to spend millions of dollars on projects. Most of the time, they would have said yes, but I just didn't know how to communicate in the right way. Because inside I had my voice saying, who am I at 20-something years old to be telling these senior executives and CEOs of other companies what they should be doing with their money? So I sabotaged myself a whole bunch of times. It was all a head case. And it wasn't until I got a lot older, I realized they didn't know anything really about digital marketing. And I didn't even have to fight uphill. It wasn't like they were going to say no. They just weren't presented the information in the right way. So I thought you and I could have a conversation about that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Awesome. Guys, today we're here with Braden Moser, and this is something I think you'll enjoy. How do you convince your boss on anything, whether it's to spend money, whether it's a project, whether it's your point of view? And together, Braden and I are going to have an interactive conversation talking about what these key points are so that you can get your way, not because you're manipulating, but because you are presenting information according to this MAA framework. And this MAA framework, which we'll go into more detail, I think you're going to find is not just good for business meetings, but is good for convincing anyone of something that you want. Like maybe you want to convince your spouse you want to sleep in, or maybe you're trying to solve a problem. This is a fantastic problem solving tool. And I learned it from the folks at McKinsey. McKinsey is the top global management consulting company, and they deal with CEOs of huge companies. They're the number one company. So if you're dealing with executives, the more logical people are, the more this is going to work for them. What do you say, Braden?
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm excited.
So at American Airlines, just to give you everything we teach is from real example. So this is not just some theory, and you can apply this today in your life and you'll find it works. You'll be like, yeah, when Braden and Dennis were talking about this, I'm surprised I didn't use this before. But American, I had to ask for money to be able to add more servers when we were building the website. And as the website got bigger and we went from just a couple sales a day to $3 million a day and people buying tickets, I had to buy more software. I had to buy more hardware. Sometimes I'd say, look, we got to spend $3 million on 2 more Sun E10,000 servers. I had to make the justification to the CMO on why we needed to spend the money. Can you imagine, Braden, what's it like asking the CMO for $3 million?
Oh, nerve-wracking, especially if you're young or if you're new to the industry or anything like that. Like it's obviously you go into that meeting just sweating.
I was your age and I had as much hair as you did too, but they saw me as this poster child, this young internet genius. And just like you guys are watching, you're thinking you're probably the internet genius at your company, where they see you as the social media expert just because it's a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
Well, I said, I think I need 2 Sun E10,000 servers and they're $1.5 million each. And each one can handle another 5,000 users per day, something like that. And here's our current traffic. And here's where I think our traffic's going to go to. So I think we need 2 of these. And then the controller, who is always pinching pennies. So in a big company, there's a role called the controller, and they're always watching over the money. And they said, his name was Phil. He said, why don't you just buy one of them? Because why would you spend $3 million? And this is the beginning of the internet. So of course now it'd be no issue at all because everyone knows like the internet's important. But back then he said, and I'm thinking I'm putting my career on the line by asking for $3 million. And I told Phil, I think we could get one, but then if we had to buy one and then wait until the traffic went up and then install the first one and then wait again and buy another one and install it, there's a delay cycle. And right now these servers are really hard to get. And there's a 2-month lag from when you order to when you get one, and they might even run out. And I see a lot of folks that are running out, like my buddies over at Amazon and Sears and Starwood, which is a big hotel chain. They had issues where they weren't able to keep up with their site traffic because they would only place the order once it was too late. They would debate with finance and marketing. Eventually they'd place the order. The servers may come in 6 weeks. Then it takes 2 or 3 weeks to install them and configure them. So now you're already 8 or 9 weeks in, and now your traffic's way higher. So I said, I think it's safer to get 2. And plus it actually saves us money because these things are in really high demand. So we did that. And I actually undershot how much traffic there was. We actually needed 3 of them. None of us knew how much traffic there was going to be on the internet. And so when I made my projections every month to finance on how much money we would have to spend on people in the call center, on servers, on software and all the things that basically scale. Like with our sales, then I was under. And the people in finance would say, well, Dennis, you're just sandbagging it, because sandbagging is when you set a number lower than what you think you're going to hit, just so you can exceed the number and look good, called sandbagging. And because we were doubling and tripling, I remember in the first 6 months or so, we went from basically almost no sales to like $1 million a day in sales. If you can imagine what that's, imagine building a site and it just grows like that. And then a few months after that, we were at $3 million a day in sales. You just imagine, can you imagine like building a new website that went from nothing to $3 million a day? And of course, haters today, 20 years later, 25 plus years later, are saying that's because you were there in the beginning of the internet, and anyone who built a website for American Airlines, people would have gone there to buy tickets. But that's not fair, because back then you wouldn't have known. So I had to convince these other people in purchasing, in finance, the other leaders in marketing, because I ran a little group within marketing that was this internet thing, because it wasn't a thing back then. I had to convince all of them that we needed to spend money and that this was something that was important, that the internet was important, which I know sounds ridiculous, but we have the same issue here. We're trying to convince people that TikTok's important. We're trying to convince them that these other things with social media, or making vertical videos, a selfie style, or convincing other lawyers that, hey, we need to get on the internet, or the internet marketing actually generates great leads for personal injury attorneys. Like that, we're trying to convince them in 5 years from now, Braden, won't it be obvious? You're like, oh, of course we needed to build these things. But right now it's not so obvious, is it?
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. Any early adopters of new technology, there's always this fear that what if it dies in 5 years and it's completely obsolete or something along those lines. So it's an uphill battle. And you're right. It's not fair to say that just because it was back in the day that it was easy.
Do you remember when Facebook came out? And it was 2007 when they first opened up the ability to advertise and do real marketing. And people were saying the same thing they're saying about TikTok in 2023. It's for kids. It doesn't apply to my business. I can't generate real leads. And so we've been doing testing for the last couple of years. This is the #1 best-selling book in social media on Amazon. It happens to be on TikTok. And it goes through the same phases where people said, Facebook, it's a fad. It's not going to last. It's just going to be another MySpace. But there's been enough growth. But TikTok was the #1 website on the internet, more than Google. Isn't that crazy? And it's growing too. And that's just the website part. The app is even crazier. And we are convincing lawyers and chiropractors and real estate agents that they need to get on TikTok. But then how do we convince them to do that? And then how do we convince them to spend money against that? So I want to walk through this idea of MAA, about what that is, ask questions. You and I were chatting, but other people get to listen to it too. And then along the way, I'm going to explain by sharing specific examples of that. Okay. So with metrics, analysis, action, it's a 3-phase way to solve problems and or convince people. But you're using logic so that they have to agree that this is the right thing to do. So metrics are when you have the data. It could be facts. It could be statistics from your Google Analytics. It could be case studies from other people, but it's some kind of data. Analysis is, well, based on this and all this data, here's what we diagnose the situation to be. And then the action is, therefore, this is what we need to do. So Braden, if we apply this to a medical format, patients that come into the emergency room, we need to collect their vitals, their blood, their x-rays, seeing like all the stuff that you would collect in a hospital when someone comes in and you're trying to figure out what's wrong before you do surgery and all this. So there's collecting the vitals. Then based on the vitals, right, we put up the x-ray, put up the blood work. We say, Braden, based on this, it looks like you have a broken collarbone, or it looks like you have just a runny nose, or it looks like whatever it is. Like we look at the data and we can exactly determine based on your data, here's what the issue is, right? So that's what a doctor does. That's a diagnosis. And then from the diagnosis, we go to the treatment plan. And the treatment plan is, because of that, we're going to do this and this. So the idea of going from collecting the vitals to doing the diagnosis, and therefore here's the treatment plan, is MAA.
Yeah.
Now, if we apply that to marketing, it's here's the data from Google Analytics. Here's the data from other personal injury attorneys. Here's the data from whatever it is. And because of that, we need to do, here's the analysis, what's going on. Oh, it's because we're not getting enough traffic. It's because our conversion rate. It's just like the SEO stuff that we were analyzing a couple of weeks ago. The reason why we are not ranked in the 3-pack for this particular term is because we don't have these kinds of links. It's because these competitors are ahead of us in this particular way. Like we can use analysis off the data to figure out what's going on and then say, and then this is our action plan. And it's a smart action plan because it's not just, I saw some guy on the internet and he said that we should do this and this. No, we need to do what's specific to your case based on your data. So most people never move from metrics to analysis because like Braden, when you log into Google Analytics, is there any analytics in Google Analytics?
No, it's just data.
It's data. Why do they call it Google Analytics?
It's the tool that we use to analyze our data. But obviously it's up to our interpretation to figure out how we use that data.
Okay. So then let's say you have there's all kinds of software like Google Analytics that generate reports. It shows you like how many clicks you have, how many people came. There's SEO tools that will show you like how many links you have and what your domain rating is and how many inbound links you have, like all these tools that generate all this data, and they have charts and pie charts and bar charts and and then they spit out the thing and it's all beautiful. But is there analytics in any of that?
No, it doesn't tell you what to do next.
Not only does it not tell you what to do next, but it doesn't tell you why your sales are up and down. It doesn't tell you why more people are coming to your website. It doesn't tell you why competitors or why certain products or sales or why certain campaigns or creatives are working better than the others. So what's the difference? Let me ask you between data, or we'll call it data reporting, like all the stuff that the software does versus analysis.
Yeah, I think it's using it to inform your decisions, right? If you find out that the data can say, yeah, you had 1,000 clicks last month and this month you have 1,500.
Okay.
And that analysis is then saying why. It's asking the question to figure out what is driving this data to change. What do we do now to either continue that trend or to fix the problems that we're facing? And it's just like actually making the data useful.
A lot of people, they jump from the data straight to the action. Here's a bunch of reports, and then they just fuzz over the analysis and they say, we need to do this and this. But what is it that bridges the data with the action? The middle part is the analysis.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I've trained thousands of people to do analytics. I ran analytics at a search engine. I've done analytics for Nike and Starbucks and all these huge companies. And it's funny because they have someone who's in charge of analytics. You can imagine at each of these companies, like at the Golden State Warriors, the guy who's in charge of analytics, his name is Brandon Ramsey. Actually, he just left. I think he went to go run analytics at Disney. Great guy. We would hang out and eat tacos and joke about the games. And his complaint, now this is the guy who runs the analytics, well, did until just recently for the Golden State Warriors. And he collected mountains of data. Think about, you go to a basketball game and there's cameras up in the ceiling. Did you know this? There's cameras up in the ceiling that measure exactly where each player is moving, how high they jump, how fast they're going. And they take all of that and then analyze it later to try to figure out like, here's different plays we should have when the Cavaliers come into town, right? We have all the data from the website. You can imagine. We have all the social media data and like YouTube data. We have the parking data on how many people bought parking passes and how much revenue we collected. You can imagine there's a lot of data from the stores on how many jerseys we're selling of Steph Curry. So remember, this guy's in charge of analytics. What do you think his number one complaint was? He has all the tools. He has all this data coming in.
I would imagine too much data, like just not knowing what to do with all this information he has.
So all these different stakeholders that are in charge of different groups. So there's the people that run the stadium. There's the people that sell the merchandise. There's the head of sales where he wants to know how many tickets we're selling. And you can imagine during the playoffs, the price of the tickets goes up real high. So it's harder to sell more tickets, but it's easier because it's the playoffs, but then the price is higher. Like they're all trying to, every single group that he's serving. So he's the head of analytics and he's serving all these different groups within the Golden State Warriors. Every one of those groups is trying to drive more sales. So if Brandon is just spending all his time generating reports, then how does he show his value? Like if you're Brandon Ramsey, how do you demonstrate your value to the organization? You're the head of analytics. What do you do, Braden?
You are the person that makes the decision on what to do with the data, and you say why we should make those decisions. It's exactly the analysis part. That's exactly how you prove your worth.
And in bigger companies like a Nike, there's so much data that they need just armies of people just to get the data into one spot. I know it sounds ridiculous. You might not have, you're working at a smaller company, but when you work at a really big company, they spend sometimes $10 million a year just to get the data from all the different places into one spot. And so what we did for Nike, for example, was we took the Pinterest data, we took Bitly data, we took sales data from the Nike towns that were opening up. We took website data. We took social media data for every single player that was sponsored, every single event, every single product by country, by campaign. I remember when Kobe Bryant had the Black Mamba campaign, and we had all these, because he called himself the Black Mamba, and we weren't driving many sales. And the VP of marketing asked us, so why aren't we driving more sales? It's freaking Kobe Bryant, right? And the analysis, which my team did, was we found that while Kobe was really popular on Twitter himself organically, the main Nike brand was so diffuse that trying to run campaigns on the Nike brand didn't really make as much sense. And so running campaigns on Nike basketball did better than the main Nike brand, even though the basketball brand was smaller, but it was higher relevance. And then running ads as Kobe Bryant outperformed all of those because people felt like they had a connection with Kobe Bryant, that they were just working out and taking that extra free throw shot and having that winner's mentality. And the analysis showed that we were not advertising on the right channels. So you would see even today that the central Nike brand doesn't actually spend much money on campaigns, and it works so much better when we advertise as the individual athlete on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whatnot, because it feels more personal. Even though we could use the central Nike brand, we can use the central Nike brand for the Olympics or things where it's okay, that's Nike, but that could only come out because of analysis to figure out why. It's like that TV show House.
Yeah.
And so there's this expert doctor and this patient's dying. And we've got to figure out, why is this patient dying? It could be this and that didn't work. It could be that and it doesn't work. And eventually by the end of the show, they find out that this guy stepped on a rusty nail and that had a particular pathogen in it and infected his blood, and he had a weird blood thing. And then they figured out all this weird stuff, like that's the thing. And then the patient is not dead. They saved the patient, right? Because they're Sherlock Holmesing their way to figure out in this detective kind of way, analyzing the data. So companies like Nike and the Golden State Warriors, they put 90% of their effort in data gathering, which is get all the data into one place and then spit out reports. And because they spent all that money just on getting all the data into one place, only 10% of it was actually on analyzing it. So I told both of these companies, I totally get, like, you're spending millions of dollars a year on the servers, on the consultants, on all the software to get all the data in one place. And then they have like Tableau or MicroStrategy or Google Data Studio, or there's all kinds of tools, Braden, that allow us to make reports, all these beautiful reports. And in internet marketing, there's lots of tools that generate reports, right?
Yeah.
But none of them do the analysis, not one. So if we as humans flip this and we spend 90% of our effort on analysis and 10% on gathering the data, that's where we really get way more power. It requires a human to think about it. Avinash Kaushik is the head of analytics at Google, and he said the exact same thing. I said it before he did, that instead of spending 90% of our time gathering the data and 10% analyzing, we flip it. That means of any budget for analytics or data or even marketing, 90% of it should be on people and 10% is software and tools. But it's so hard to get people that can actually analyze data, even though they say they do analytics, that it's just easier for a company to buy these tools and buy the software, because you can just buy it. And there's sales reps that will say, oh yeah, if you buy our tool, it'll do all this and it'll do all that. And you don't need a human because it's automated. It's got this AI that figures out what's going on. It's garbage. But it's way harder to hire humans and train them up and manage them than it is just to buy some software that the software companies, oh yeah, you should just buy our software, it does everything.
Yeah.
And that's where you come in, because your boss and other people that are like your boss, it's not that they're dumb. They're lawyers, or they're expert in the thing that they do, but they don't know anything about how to analyze internet data or data in general.
Yeah.
So you understand, like, all the reason why people are so tool heavy is that the tool companies put out this propaganda because it enhances they're trying to get everyone to buy their tool. Just like you can imagine cigarette companies, they're telling everyone, oh yeah, they're economically incentivized. There's bias in there. So we shouldn't listen to what the tool companies have to say, because the tool companies don't want you to, it's not like they don't want you to analyze, but they just rather you spend every dollar buying their software. That's why the whole world of internet and social media marketing is so polluted, because the companies that make the money, the economic process drives us. It's so much easier to sell tools than it is to train up people that know what they're doing.
Yeah. But at the end of the day,
like self-reinforcing.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, every tool is just selling reports disguised as analysis. It's still not true analysis. It's just a report. It's a fancy generated report.
That's exactly it. So this is a case that we all know now that the emperor has no clothes because everyone else is using all these different tools. Like how often, Braden, do you hear like one of your colleagues or whatever, or someone in the industry say, hey, check out this cool new tool. Hey, look at this one thing. Hey, check out this shiny object.
Almost every day.
How often do you hear, I was analyzing the data and I discovered this is why our leads are going up or down. This is why this certain thing's happening.
Maybe once a month if I'm lucky.
So let me tell you how MAA works, and I'll give you a few examples. So at American Airlines, I used MAA by saying, here's what I see in sales, and here's the projected trends that for other industry experts are saying that the internet's going to be able to go. Here's our current data growth, which albeit a brand new website, we're growing, but it's hard to say exactly, are we going to sell $10,000 a day, $1 million a day? And I said, here's what other, not airlines, because we were leading all the other airlines. So looking what the other airlines did, like, why would you do that? Then don't follow them. But here's what other leading internet companies were doing. And here's some of my friends at eBay and at Amazon, and this is what they're doing. And here's why they're doing it. And here's what they've noticed in their growth. And eBay and Amazon were way ahead of us at American Airlines because you can imagine like what they were doing back then. And I said, I think it's reasonable to assume that American Airlines doing $21 billion a year, that we should be able to get 1% of our revenue onto the internet this year. Do you think, is that reasonable? The internet's about to become this big thing. I can get 1%. So 1% of $21 billion is 200.
$500 million.
That's $200 million, right? So $200 million is just short of $1 million a day. Mm-hmm. So I think we should easily, now I'm sticking my neck out because I could be wrong. It could be the internet's a fad. And it could be that I spent all this money building up all this infrastructure, and then we just get 3 sales a day. And then people laugh at me and I get fired because, oh, that's the dentist guy who made us spend millions of dollars buying all this stuff just because he was thinking like the end of the world was going to happen, or he just drank too much Kool-Aid. But it ended up that we were, instead of $1 million a day, we were at $3 million a day within a year. So I was wrong. And our servers couldn't handle the load, and we had to buy more servers. Obviously, my job was more than just buying servers. We had to build the software too and build the marketing programs. But I used the data to come up with the analysis, and from the analysis to say, therefore, we need to do these things. Let me give you a better example.
Okay.
So we had an issue where there were a lot of people that were coming to the website, Braden. And back then, people weren't really sure whether they're getting the best price or not. So they would come back and they'd search all the time. And then they go to other websites. They go to Delta, or they go to their travel agent and say, the price of the ticket from LA to San Francisco was $358. And now it went down to $215. And maybe I'll check again, but maybe the price will go back up. And so I didn't really want to. So people would go to the internet to check the price. And every time someone checked the price, it cost us a penny of all the servers and other things that were involved. And so we started just racking up these huge expenses. So I had $1 million a month of expense of people coming to the website, aa.com, and just checking flights. And so we called these lookers. They would just look, but they didn't book, they didn't buy. So then the question, so imagine you're me. This is a real example. Imagine that there's all these people coming. So we initially were successful because like all these people are coming to the website. So yes, thank goodness I knew people would come to the website because of course they would. They didn't want to go to the travel agent. They didn't want to call on the phone. They just want to go to the website because they didn't have to talk to anyone. They just check right now, right, what the price is. But they weren't buying. So we were just bleeding all this money initially. So why, what's going on here, right? Now let's put on our Sherlock Holmes hat and think, why is this happening? What can we do? There's more and more people coming to the website and they're just looking up the fares. They're doing fare quotes, but they're not buying. Why?
Yeah, I mean, they're just trying to gather data themselves so they can make their decision. And so they're going to go, like you said, check Delta, come back again, check again, and then come back on the weekend and check again until they see, okay, I feel confident that I've found enough information to make the choice and buy.
So we thought, and it was correct, that just like you said, that people were afraid they weren't getting the best price. So they keep checking. And it cost them nothing to check. It cost us money every time they check. And there was no incentive for them to buy through the website. Why wouldn't they just buy through the travel agent? It's the same price. Plus the travel agent can check the prices for them and all this, but we had to pay a commission to the travel agency, right? This is before there was an Expedia or Travelocity or what's called the OTAs, the online travel agents, like the third parties like an Orbitz or other folks that let you look across all these other sites like a Skyscanner. which just got sold. They were a client of ours. And so I said, we need to have a first-time booking bonus. That if you book through us directly as the airline, and I think my idea is I said, let's give them 1,000 miles, right? 1,000 American Airlines Advantage miles. Why not? Because the miles cost us about 0.7 cents. So a little bit more than half a penny. So if we gave out 1,000 miles, that would cost us $70, or is it $77? Yeah, or seven. What is that? Net of breakage. 1,000. Can't even do the maths here. Is it $7? $7. Yeah. So is it worth it, Braden, to pay $7 to get someone to book through us? Because they're going to buy the ticket anyway. They're going to go to Hawaii for their honeymoon. So why not just give them an incentive to book through us? And the other VPs were arguing. They're saying, no, I think the issue is credit card security. Like, people are afraid of entering a credit card onto the internet. And now today it's not a big deal. But back then it was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to enter a credit card because it could get stolen and it's on the internet and all that. And not that many people were buying things on the internet using a credit card. And other people were saying, that's just way too much. And some of my other friends were saying, it should be more than that. You should give out 10,000 miles. And I was pushing for a first-time booking bonus. Because I just book once, just the first time you book with us. And I said, you know what? We could actually do it with 5,000 miles. So let's call that $35. Why not give them 5,000 miles? Because a free round trip ticket is 20,000 miles generally. If you give them only 1,000, let's say they have 10,000 miles and you give them another 1,000 miles, like, Braden, that's not enough, right?
Yeah.
But if you give them 5,000, that's actually a quarter of the way towards another ticket. In fact, if they did it 4 times, they'd earn enough for another ticket, right? And then other people, there is the head of revenue management, which is the guy who sets all the prices for all the airlines. So this guy's super smart. Imagine like the guy in charge of all the software that we use, which was called Odyssey. We built our own software to determine what the prices were. And all the other airlines copied our software and stole our people, which is a whole nother story. But he said, and this guy's super smart. He said, instead of giving a first-time booking bonus, why don't we just say, every time you book, we'll give you an extra 1,000 miles. And then once you have booked 5 flights, then we'll give you another however many.
Yeah.
And that sounded good, right? You want to, especially business people who are flying a lot, you want to give them incentives over time and have them earn it out. And so I did some analysis and I did a grid. I'm so proud of this. I should print it out and write a whole story about it. No one else knows. I'm going to tell you, Braden, for the first time. So I did this grid. And on the top, the axes were how many times people looked. They did a fair quote. Did they do the fair quote once, twice, 3 times, all the way up to 50 times? And then the bottom axes were how many times they actually bought the ticket. And then there's a diagonal line going all the way down. So then this would be, the diagonal line is if they looked 1 time and booked 1 time. If they looked 10 times and they bought 10 times, that means they bought every single time. So if you bought every single time, it would be 1 to 1, 10 to 10, 20 to 20, 50 to 50. So the top triangle is shaded in, right? That's because no one can be like, they looked once and bought 5 times. Like you can only be, the most they could ever do is this diagonal line going all the way down. You follow me on this?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. So then there's people where they look 5 times and they book once, or they look twice and then they didn't buy 1 time. And then there's people where they looked 50 times. So they banged us. So it cost us 50 cents because it cost us a penny every time. And then they didn't buy it all. So you had all this, you can imagine there's this scattering of and I did the mapping of it as a scatter plot. And I found that of the people that start at 0, 0, and then they move to 1, they could either go to 1, 0 or go to 1, 1, or they can go to 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. I found that there were some people when they actually bought the ticket, then they would start moving down the line. What happened is if they just booked the first time, then they were likely to continue booking, or I'm sorry, continue paying, paying for the thing. Yeah. And I found people who didn't buy the first few times, they would just keep costing us money and they would never turn around to eventually buying. So I just need the data. I could clearly show the data showed that if they bought just once, they would continue to buy. Therefore, there is no need to offer an ongoing incentive. Just needed to offer a first-time booking bonus. You follow me on that?
Yeah.
So I printed out the charts and I showed how this graph was so everyone could see it. I called a meeting. This is before we had Zoom and all of this. Like we actually printed out papers. I know it was the internet group, but I still used a lot of paper for some weird reason for meetings. And people came into the room and I printed out these papers and I gave them to everybody. And I said, everybody, let's talk about what's the right incentive that we should offer. First off, I didn't say, let's cover what my idea is.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes, oh yeah, what about Mike's idea? What about Braden's idea? It's not about my idea is better than your idea. Let's talk about what the right incentive is to offer. So by saying that, I've already won because I've already got everyone to agree that we are going to offer an incentive.
Yeah.
There's not a question of whether there's going to be incentive or not. It's what the right incentive is. So then I showed him the data and I went through metrics to analysis to action. And I went through each of these cases, and the analysis is because people who book the first time will continue to buy, we need to get people into the thing once and give them some kind of incentive. And the incentive economically has to make sense. So $35 to get someone to book the first time is actually not bad because we're paying $50 as our travel agency commission. So we're still saving money. And if they continue to buy through us, we're paying no commission because every time they book through the travel agent, they're having to pay that commit. We're having to pay the commission to the travel agency every single time. And then I made a little guesstimate. I said, of all the people that are coming in, maybe 200,000, 300,000 people a day are coming in, maybe it's more than that. I forgot what the number was back then. But let's say there's 200,000 people a day that are coming to the website and they're just doing fare quotes and it's costing us money. What if we could get an extra increase in the conversion rate from 0.5%, which is probably where we were, to 1%. And these are people who are already loyal American Airlines customers. They've flown American Airlines many times. We know they're going to fly. We know they're going to fly on American Airlines, but how do we get them to book through us direct on the website at AA.com? I thought we could probably raise that from 0.5% to 1%. So I said, this will increase our revenue from $100,000 a day to $300,000 or 200 something thousand dollars a day. We can double our revenue with this incentive. And if we double our revenue, then here's what our projection is going to be for overall site income versus where we are right now. So we're saving money versus the other channels. And there's someone from reservations where they run the call center. They were in the room and they said, yeah, but we could just run them through reservations because people can just call the phone number. And I said, yeah, but there's a lot of people that don't want to call the phone number because the internet, for various reasons, they would just rather just do it on the internet. And there's always, and you're right, there's always people who do want to use the phone. And that's why we're not shutting down the call center. But there's some people who just want to use the phone and grandma wants to talk to them on the phone and give her, like, read the credit card number to the person on the phone. That's actually less secure than it is putting it into the website because of all the things we did to make the website secure. So I went through the whole reasoning and I said, through the metrics to the analysis and in the action, you say, therefore, because of this analysis, we should do this and this. And so we implemented the 5,000 mile first time booking bonus. It worked like crazy. And in hindsight, everyone would say, yeah, obviously Dennis came up with the 5,000 mile booking bonus. So yeah, obviously in hindsight, I got a lot of flack because people said, oh, he just happened to be there at the right time and he was lucky. But I came up with that idea. And the other airlines copied it. It did so well that Delta and Continental and United and all these other guys copied my 5,000 mile booking bonus. They copied exactly the way I set up that program. And that's an application of using MAA. It doesn't require that you have to put together this whole analysis, whatever it is. You can use MAA all the time in this lightweight way to analyze. You can do MAA. It's not only for huge projects. It's for any kind of logical thinking where you're trying to decide what to do. And there's some kind of data. As long as there's some kind of data that you can reasonably look at to interpret what's going on, you can then make a recommendation based on the data. So people have to take your recommendation, Braden, if they're logical, because you can, from the recommendation is logically chained to the analysis. I can't argue that. And then the analysis is tied to the data. So here's the punchline of this whole thing. And I want to hear what you think about this. What I've learned in the last 25 years, whoever has the closest control of the data owns the whole decision-making process, because from the data, we have the analysis and no one can challenge our analysis because we have the best access to the data. They'd have to challenge us on the data. Whoever's the data can do the analysis. Whoever's the analysis can make the recommendations. So I have done this hundreds of times inside the largest of companies. And just like when we were doing these audits together, Braden, the last couple of times, we were looking at the data of SEO for these various companies. And can you argue that data, Braden? Pretty hard to argue.
That's facts.
So then if I come in and I get access to your Google Analytics, I get access to your CRM, and I can see the data, and then we can do analysis on it together, on your data, not on what I heard someone else say you're supposed to do, but on our specific data. We look at this and we figure out what's going on, and we tell a story around like why certain things are happening. And then we make a recommendation because of this. Therefore, obviously we need to do this and this. This is how I've convinced people at Red Bull to spend money on social media. This is how I convinced Nike to run ads against the players instead of against the central brand, by using the reasoning from the data, by actually spending time analyzing the data, not printing charts, not using more tools. I did almost all of this with no tools, except the most important tool, which is the one between your ears. That's MAA. I'm curious to see, what do you think about that? The idea that whoever's closest to the data if they're smart at being able to analyze the data and can reason through it and communicate it clearly, they will win almost every time.
Yeah. If you think of like decision making is like you're stuck in the middle of a dark room and you don't know where to go. Data is like shining a light on your surroundings. And if you can control that, then obviously people are going to go to where the light is shining.
Yeah, exactly. But when you think about in any company, the people that are in control of the data, what do you think of? These are like geeks or engineers or people that use all these tools. But I consider this actually a business strategy issue. I think analytics and business strategy and optimization are actually the same thing. Because when you hear analytics, you think software, tools, programming, math, formulas. And you're like an Asian guy like me, oh, this guy, of course, he ran analytics at a search engine. But like when I ran analytics at Yahoo, we'd have people like the head of Yahoo Personals, which is a dating website, argue, her name was Tina Flemmer, wonderful woman, but wow, she was aggressive. Argue about why she needed more traffic and we needed to give her more of the unsold inventory because we had all this inventory that was bought by Ford and Motorola and whatever. And the stuff that wasn't sold, we gave to all our internal properties. So she would argue why she deserved more of the traffic because it was the number one business in the world that had an LTV that was over $100 back then of a SaaS. It was the ultimate SaaS. And it was a way that we enriched the overall LTV of Yahoo because when they come in through, they use Yahoo Search, then they have Yahoo Mail, then you add on more Yahoo properties, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Personals. And it was super profitable. And we grew that from nothing to $100 million a year in 3 years, which is great with just a few engineers. Then Rich, who was the head of small business, he said, we need to do this because when people come in, these are business people. And so not only are they setting up a domain and email for their company, but they're doing this for everyone in their company. And when everyone in their company is doing this, then they're going to be more likely to use Yahoo. And Gmail was coming up and Gmail wasn't even popular. Gmail just started. Yahoo Mail dominated everybody in mail, even dominated AOL. And so he was saying, yeah, this is our way of preserving competitive advantage because if your business, like maybe you have a Gmail or AOL or Hotmail or something, but if your business was using Yahoo and requiring everyone to use Yahoo Mail, then it would be another way to build Yahoo's base. And so each of these guys in every different department, Yahoo horoscopes, finance, whatever, each of these different departments would make a justification on why they deserved more of that unsold inventory. So we had a weekly meeting with these guys and we called it pigs at the trough. I called it pigs at the trough. All of them wanted to get more inventory. And of course, there was never enough inventory to go around. We had an extra 1 billion impressions per week to give out that was not sold. But everyone, of course, wanted more because it was free inventory. So if you were in charge of, let's say, Braden, you're in charge of Yahoo Sports and you wanted more people to sign up for Yahoo Sports, you would try to use your data and make this argument about why, Dennis, Yahoo Sports is really growing. And you make your whole case about why you deserve more than your fair share of that inventory. And so I put all of this effort initially into getting all the data in one place because we have to. And then very quickly, I switched into now we need to do analysis against it. So I hired up another dozen people to do analysis against the data. So that way we could show that we were fairly providing an allocation of that unsold data. But the funny thing was that first phase, like getting all the data in one place was a lot of engineering. You can imagine like how much was involved to pull in the search logs and from our search engine, which was huge, like 200 million users and all the things that they're searching on and all their activity across the different properties. So I hired a whole team of engineers just to get the data in one place. But a lot of these engineers, they're really good at statistical modeling and managing large databases, but they didn't really have the best communication skills. They had decent communication skills. And a lot of them, English wasn't their first language because they were Asian and Indian, which is great. So I had to build up a team of people that could look at the data, interpret the data, and talk about it intelligently. And all of these people were marketing engineers. I trained up a team of marketing engineers. A, they were engineers because they could work with the data because we had lots of data, you can imagine. And B, they knew enough about business strategy to interpret the data. So Braden, I'd ask you, based on this, what does this mean for you in terms of being strong at the business strategy and having enough technical skill to work with the data? And how hard is it to put both sides together?
Yeah. My last semester of school, I took a bunch of business classes and financing and accounting and things like that, because that was when I realized you need to have an understanding of a lot of different aspects and a lot of different information in order to make good business decisions. And putting them together, I think for some people is really difficult. It's really challenging to see how this number applies to their business. how does 1,000 impressions a month apply to my business?
Yeah.
And figuring out what to do with that, the analysis aspect of it, it takes some skill. It takes some intuition. It's like the art of marketing. And I think that's where I bring a lot of value to my workplace, is that's what I love to do. I love to make the connection between the data and the analysis, and then say why we should make a decision and why we should make changes.
Yeah. So let's go real specific. So I've been talking generically about things in the past, but looking at your situation for Kansas City accident attorneys, how might you apply this MAA model to your business?
For example, right now we're looking at our next big spend marketing opportunity. So we increased our pay-per-click spending by 10x recently, and we aren't getting results at all, almost. We actually saw a decrease in the number of clicks as we increased our spend 10 times. And so we look at the data and we were thinking, like, what are we going to do with this? And after looking at all of the data, we decided to stop or to decrease our PPC spending, which is like the obvious next step. But then you have the challenge of, okay, now we have this extra money that we want to spend on something else. What are we going to put it into? And my initial thought is to go into kind of some more impression based, like radio ads or YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, and just reach a lot of people, get our name into a lot of people's heads. And then she's a fractional CMO, so she works part-time remotely. And her kind of philosophy is to invest the money into something that we can directly track a conversion off of. So it's hard if you do like billboards, really hard to track conversions on. Impression-based marketing can be pretty difficult to track conversions on. And so she is like trying to lean towards other channels that she can directly track conversions through. And so I need to go now and I need to find some data, do some analysis, and find something that supports my reasoning about why I think we should go with more of an impression-based strategy for a short amount of time, and move to making these TikTok videos, move to making some YouTube ads and some Instagram Reels ads, whatever it might be. And then hopefully I can present that analysis to her and to the big boss and say, this is the action we should take. And I think I want to incorporate what you talked about, not just saying, this is what we're going to do, present it as, but where are we going to go next?
Yeah, you have a statement of the problem. So everyone's in agreement at the very beginning, and it's not any one person's opinion. You show the data and you say, and the analysis shows that, for example, where our leads are converting, we're just not getting enough at bats. And therefore we need to load the top and middle of the funnel. And maybe our data, as you start to do this analysis, our data is incomplete. Maybe we don't have conversion tracking set up and tied to events that are in GA4 that are driven by the Google Tag Manager pixel. Maybe there's other things that are broken where we could be using UTM parameters, or we could be tying data together in certain ways or enriching data so we can have better analysis off of that. Maybe based on benchmarks on what we see working with other personal injury attorneys, where what's working best for them on Instagram and TikTok and whatever, we're not even there. So that's just free money. That's exposure. We're not to say that the benchmark is the thing that we should shoot for. The industry average is not necessarily the thing that you want to go for many reasons. We're recording zeros there because we're not using the best practices that work across all social media, vertical videos, the things that we talked about. There's things from a search engine standpoint that we know people are searching on certain keywords, and you guys do have great rankings, but you don't have as many search features as could be because you're not doing the video strategy. And maybe you determine, I don't know, we'd have to look at the data, but maybe you determine that your SEO strategy is primarily text-based, but you're missing the whole video component, which will allow you to do SEO and social at the same time. And because of that, here's how much additional traffic we think there could be. And so you maybe roughly estimate, no one knows exactly what the numbers are. And a smart fractional CMO, and then the big boss will look at this from a business standpoint and say, this Braden kid, he certainly knows the ins and outs of social media better than we can. So I'd never argue with him on that. And the analysis seems to make sense that the issue is not that our conversions have dropped. It's that people aren't seeing us enough times. So that when they get in an accident, like, oh yeah, KC accident attorneys, then that seems like a reasonable thing. And we could see what our impression load is by tying everything together in the GA and our GMB data, which can be tied directly in the GA, some of the new things that have come out. So you maybe, I'm just going to guess, but very likely there's some data components that are not tied properly together. So you'd have to infer instead of having, not to say you could have all the data to make a perfect decision, because in digital, you only have partial data. That's just how it is. But a little more work on the data side, then your analysis is where the most important part is. And then every action that derives from the analysis, everyone's on the same page. So they will go with you on, Yeah, you're right. We need to, not a surprise. We need to be stronger on social media. We're not getting enough cases from social media. Yeah, we need to, there's more impressions, there's more entertainment, there's more education, and SEO will only get us so far because our current SEO is text-based and it's bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
And you can clearly show that. No one can argue that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely some areas where we need to optimize our data gathering. The vendor that we're using right now to manage our PPC, they are also in control of our analytics. And I don't have access to it. I don't know if anybody else in our marketing department has access to it. And that's a huge problem. So I think very first and foremost, I need to go in there and just, like you said, whoever controls the data controls the decision making. And be like, look, if they have all of our data, we have our hands tied behind our back. We can't make decisions effectively.
You're the fat man getting a shoe shine. How do you know?
Exactly.
Can I ask you this, a strong recommendation? Whenever you have a PPC agency or any agency that's doing ads, never, ever, with no exception, ever allow them to control or own any of the underlying assets. You have to own it. That's just a rule. For 20 plus years, every time I've seen people violate that rule, they regret it later, especially things like Facebook ads. Because if they create that account and you want to bring it in-house, they're like, oh no, sorry, we can't do that because it's tied to our business manager. Then you lose all the data. You lose all the remarketing audiences. Think about how important the remarketing audiences are. Think about all the pixels. And like those things are tied to the ad account. Free advice, I'd say, especially if you believe in this idea of MAA, which is this logical way of solving problems, you should own that data. And this idea of who owns the accounts and who owns the data in smaller businesses, people never really think of that as like an important issue. Oh, I've got a vendor. And would you trust the wolf in the hen house? Like,
no, definitely not.
You absolutely have to have control. If I'm a PPC agency, and that's what I do, of course, my recommendation is that we should increase the spend on PPC, right? I'm not saying that they're not ethical or whatever, but there's an inherent bias because of their role as being an agency, as opposed to you are representing, someone has to look out for the law firm. And the big boss they need someone who they can trust, who is logical, who's not just going to choose based on so-and-so's a friend. Oh, my friend who runs a PPC agency, we just had dinner and they're a good friend. So they made a recommendation. We should spend more money on PPC. That's pretty weak analysis. The analysis is we should do it because they're a friend of mine.
Yeah. It's not logical at all.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And they've been working with this vendor for a couple of months. So before I even came onto the team. And that's been one of my first big projects was we didn't own our Google business profiles.
Oh man.
They did. So I went in and I messaged our vendor and I was like, hey, we need these accounts. We need to be listed as the primary owner so that we can at least see where our traffic is coming from and be able to post on our Google business profiles and all this stuff. So I've gone in and I've got our Google business profiles now. We own all of our locations. And I think definitely we need some analytics access. We need to own it. We need to own it.
Absolutely. Yeah, not just access. You need to straight up own it so you can kick them out and run with it. And anything short of that is just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And do you think the CMO and the big boss understand how important that is?
I'm sure the CMO does. She's also, it's a long story. They actually had a marketer, full-time marketer at the firm for a couple of years. And then recently at the beginning of this year, she left and then they brought on the fractional CMO and then they brought on myself. And it was right before the previous marketer left that they switched vendors, signed a 14-month contract, and then gave up all control of the website. I don't have access to our website, which is hosted on WordPress, which is where I have over 8 years of experience in WordPress.
Dang.
And I've worked at a marketing agency, run ad campaigns, done analytics, set up pixels, all through WordPress. I don't have access to any of that. And so it's been an uphill battle for me. I don't even know what data we have so I can make decisions about campaigns. And I'm going into this blind essentially. And it's hard too, because the owner, he has this mastermind group that he's a part of, which is great. You get amazing recommendations, education. And when you come in as a new guy, as a marketer, and you're like, hey, I think I need this data. And they say, well, actually, I have a lawyer friend who told me,
oh no,
just go with this guy. Then it's me, the new fresh marketer versus longtime lawyer friend recommendations. And
yeah, but if it's digital marketing, then it's our territory. Right?
Yeah. And you would imagine that, and like you said, if you have your PPC friend over for dinner and they say, hey, because I'm your friend, you should increase PPC spend. That's a very illogical decision. So
but that's how most people make decisions though.
Yeah. Relationship-based decision-making, it's a challenge to overcome. And so I'm excited to implement MAA in my kind of tactics to say we need to set some things as a priority because we need this data. We need to be able to perform analytics so that we can make effective decisions for the business.
Do you think that the CMO and the big boss would agree that logical, rational, smart decision making is critical instead of just, I heard someone else say this?
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Do you think if you're not already that you could be the head of analytics for your company?
Oh, certainly. I thought that was a part of my job description already.
Okay. So then you being the head of analytics and being clear that, okay, so do you think that the CMO and the big boss also understand the proper definition of analytics, which is to analyze as opposed to making reports?
That's a good question. I think that I think I would need to present that definition to them in order for them to fully understand the weight of data and analytics.
Do you have a monthly meeting where you present the state of analytics across all the different channels and what's blocking you? Like you don't have access to the WordPress or you don't have access to this other stuff. And then every month you have a 15-minute status meeting saying, this is the analytics meeting. And everyone knows, anyone who wants to do anything with analytics understands this is where I'm Braden, I'm the head of analytics. And here's the state of our analytics. Here's what's going on with metrics. Here's analysis. Here's the action. And they understand that's the cadence that has to happen.
Yeah, we need to set something up like that.
Because then it's one thing to say that you're the head of analytics and people are like, yeah, you put it in your LinkedIn job title or something like that. But if you actually, like having muscles, it means nothing unless you actually use them. So you have to have some kind of, every 2 weeks or every month, you have some kind of meeting where you send it out to whoever the other leaders are. And then you say, this is what we found so far. And this is the things that I've done. These are the things that I'm working on. And these are the things that I need help on. Hit that vendor and give us this thing. Here's the things that I need, right? So if you always present according to those 3 areas, here's the things that we've done in the last 2 weeks or since the last meeting. Here's the things I'm going to do in this next period. And here's what I need from you because it's blocking me, right? Dependency. And you're making it very clear, Braden, the value that you're providing your company.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I imagine you have some kind of like a weekly status report or some sort of update, right? But are you doing it in such a way that every time you give that update, you also say, and then here's what's up next. And here's where I need help from you guys so that I can do my job.
Yeah.
If you just keep that list updated, it could be Basecamp, Google Sheets, whatever your way of just keep, you understand though the model. Does it make sense that these 3 buckets?
Yeah. What I've done, what I'm going to do, and what I need to do that.
Yeah. Where you guys have to help me on, you need to go talk to somebody because they're not cooperating, or you need to give me money, or I need to hire a VA, or here's the things I need to do my job. That way, these 3 are linked together. Because if you just make a request and it's not based on your goals of what you're trying to do, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And the beauty is, it seems like it's more work. It seems like it's another thing you have to do. But once you get this thing in place, all you're doing is just maintaining this list of these 3 things. And then every month or every week or however often you have this meeting, which you sound like you're a pretty good presenter. You are then running strategy. And then as other people come to this meeting, they will bring forward their business challenges. We need more dog bite cases, or our radio is not as effective as what it is. And so they will naturally come to you, Braden. This is going to seem weird. On business strategy problems, that these are lawyers who've been doing this a long time. They will come to you for business strategy questions to solve. And I have done this with hundreds of Bradens across all sorts of companies, and it works. My buddy Braden, who also was young but ran analytics at the Golden State Warriors, when he started the job, first day on the job, he came to me and said, oh my goodness, Dennis Yu is here. Holy moly, so glad you're here. Good to meet you. And I'm reading your articles and all that kind of stuff. And I said, great, congratulations. You're the head of analytics for the Golden State Warriors. Sounds really good. Seems like we should celebrate, right? Wrong. Let me tell you what's going to happen in your position, because I've seen other people that are the heads of analytics at these other companies. What's going to happen is people say, wow, there's a head of analytics. Holy moly, this is great. I'm just going to dump all my report requests. Now we finally have someone to make all the reports and do low end kind of things. I'm just going to just flood them with, because we've never had one. So everyone can just make all these requests. And I said, these people are going to make all these requests and they're going to think that you're the lackey that just does the errand boy that does these little sorts of tasks. And they think that they're going to, if you don't preempt them, they're going to assume that you just make reports, or you just run some ads on social media, or you just do some technical reporting kind of thing that I don't really care about, because I care about the business side and getting more cases and intake and our brand strategy and what we stand for. They won't naturally think of you as someone who has a seat at the table to talk business strategy. And I told him this, I said, this is what's going to happen. unless you preempt. Because this just happens at every company. And so for the first 6 months, that's what happened to him because he didn't hold a meeting because he was so busy like learning about the Warriors and because he came from ESPN or wherever it was he came from before. And he was just learning about the company and he just didn't have the balls to send out a note saying, hey, as the head of analytics, we're going to have a meeting every month. And here's what we're going to cover, what I'm working on, and then you can come to this meeting. And this is how you let me know what your goals are so that I can support that. I can make sure we have the data to be able to properly evaluate what's going on. We can then analyze it to make smart recommendations and then implement it, right? And then we can give the recommendations to the PPC people or some other ad agency, or I can implement them myself because I learned how to do TikTok ads from Dennis or whatever it might be. And so people see this logical flow from metrics to analysis to action. You indoctrinate them, they understand that. But for the first 6 months, Brandon didn't do this because he was just too afraid to do this. And 6 months in, I said, so where are we at? Yep, I'm stuck in the report slime pit. Now I've got all these reports I'm supposed to make, and I'm building this data warehouse for millions of dollars to collect all the data. But I'm so busy trying to collect the data and deal with these technical things that I'm not really spending any time doing analysis. And I said, I told you so, Brandon, because the analysis, his name is similar to yours. You're Braden, he's Brandon. The analysis, Braden, is worth 10 times more than the data gathering.
Yeah.
So focus more effort on analysis than on data gathering and reporting and tools. Like the tools and all that are sexy, but analysis is just worth way, way more. So if you implement this, you will drive the business strategy for your law firm. Do you see that? The person who's seen as like the geeky social media, digital PPC, whatever, is actually the one driving the business.
Makes sense.
But whoever has the data controls the business. So it sounds like this PPC company has got you by the balls right now.
Yeah.
So they're actually controlling your business and you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've got a nice meeting topic to have when we come back from this long weekend.
If they don't cooperate, then you can always go back to the big boss, because if you put in place the structure of what you've done, what you're going to do, and what you need, you can always escalate anything that you can't get through because of political power or because of whatever. You can the big boss is on your side because you're going to meet with the big boss every month or whatever. Everyone's going to have our little 30-minute meeting or something. And then you are able to run your ability to reason and coordinate and manage the political skills and whatever is actually more important than your ability to tune Google ads or whatnot.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited for Tuesday.
Yeah. So what do you think you can pull this off? Is it daunting? Is it like, what do you think about this? The idea of you basically running business strategy, but what are you, a digital marketing analyst, or what's your supposed title?
Marketing specialist. It's like the broad, I do everything related to marketing and a little bit of business strategy and operations now.
Can we change that title from marketing specialist to director of analytics?
Yeah, I could talk about that.
I'm pretty sure they'll say yes, because then that gives you an opportunity to say, look, what does a marketing specialist do? It's just some guy who's using these different tools to try to tune marketing. Who are those people that work inside the cars, the service people, who are the mechanics? Like the car mechanics, they have grease because they're changing tires. And people think of a marketing specialist as some low end person. And I know you're new and whatever, but I don't want you to be stuck in this thing, because the job title marketing specialist somehow implies somebody who's just working with all these marketing tools and doing this low end, like maintenance, changing oil kind of things on the marketing machine. The director of analytics is like one step up from marketing specialist, but then it allows you to run this program that I'm telling you about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think you could, like, is that something you want to do? I know, just based on what you're saying, I think that's what you should do.
So in high school, I got my IT certs. So like my A+ and my Net+, PC Pro and things like that.
Yeah.
And I love troubleshooting. I love problem solving. I love going in, testing things, finding out what the problem is and fixing it. That's my passion. And that's why I got into marketing, is because I loved looking at the numbers and seeing, okay, this is where we can make some changes and see some improvements. And
it's not even websites. It's not even networking. It's problem solving, but you need data to solve problems, which is why you're in a more technical sort of space, because there's more data involved.
Exactly.
So call yourself the director of analytics. No one's going to say no to that. And it aligns more closely to what you're good at. Do you really want to be a marketing specialist? What does a marketing specialist do? Come on.
Yeah.
And then when you move into this new role and you're holding these regular meetings and you're able to solve problems and make sure you have the data to solve each. So every time a new request comes in, you've got to maintain a list of requests, of course, and you're able to solve it. You have the data, you do the analysis, you present it. Some things just take 2 minutes and some things maybe require a little bit more work. but your value is clearly sustained because people can see you have a process for solving problems. You are the problem solver for the business, not some marketing specialist.
Yeah.
You think that you could pull that off and have a meeting where you're able to communicate and field the different issues, and every month or every 2 weeks or whatever your schedule is, you run this sort of thing?
At this point, it's not even just if I can do it. It's something that needs to be done.
And the big boss trusts you enough to let you do that. You have a small company anyway. It's not like companies that have over 100 people, it's a little tougher to do, but you have a tiny company, so it should be easy to do.
Yeah. I think I could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Other questions for me or other thoughts?
I loved learning about MAA. I love logical thinking. I've always been a logical thinker. I think that my biggest challenge has always been when I go against somebody who makes decisions from an emotional or relational standpoint. Do you have any strategies for dealing with people like that?
Yeah. First off, you need to know who they are. So these people, because they're older, because they have more years of experience, because so is friends with, those people are all called hippos. Have you heard of a hippo?
I have not.
It stands for highest paid person's opinion. When you're in a meeting and then the big boss is there, they're the hippo. So the big boss will just look at an ad campaign or look at something and say, I think we should do this. And because it's the hippo, by default, everyone's just going to defer. The big boss said that instead of using reasoning and logic. So as long as everyone's aware of the problem of the hippo, that the hippo himself or herself needs to be aware that they may just give off some random thought without realizing that because they're the hippo, other people will just defer to it and do that blindly, like lemmings off the cliff. So you are able to disarm a hippo. You're not trying to kill a hippo. You're not trying to fight the hippo because the hippo is bigger than you and they'll squash you. You're like a deer and they're the hippo. You put in place this framework of MAA and you say, now here's, for example, you start with reporting. So reporting shows, this is how many impressions we had. This is how many clicks, how many phone calls, how many whatever, how many cases, and you show the funnel pipeline, right? That's reporting. That's the first step of MAA because it's just metrics. Any kind of reports, that's just metrics. And you put those metrics out there. And so you feed all the hippos those metrics because the hippos, who are the big bosses, they don't want to be in the little weeds and details. They just want to know what the numbers are. And that way they can provide their opinion, which is great. And you'll listen to their opinion. Doesn't mean you're going to act upon the recommendation, but you'll acknowledge it. You'll understand it. You know how, Braden, there's a way where you can reflect an understanding, active listening, reflect back that you understand what they're saying without necessarily agreeing or saying that, okay, we're going to do that. You acknowledge an understanding of what this thing is that you're going to analyze it. So if you put in place this first layer of metrics and everyone, including the hippo, realizes this and they understand you have a methodical way because you're the director of analytics on how we solve problems and you acknowledge the goal, right? Because MAA is about the achieving of a goal or solving a problem, like getting someone healthy or driving more leads. Or with marketing, it's very obvious what the goal is, right? But you have to state the goal and you have to measure against the goal. Then when you have this framework, you've won because you've already set up the chessboard in the way that you just can't lose. It's not that you're cheating, but just this MAA is a logical framework, but you have to pre-inoculate all the hippos so they understand you have this framework. So it's not you and your ability to sweet talk and use these psychological tricks because they'll be able to communicate better than you. They carry more authority. But when you put in place this logical frame, this is why I'm saying you got to put this thing in place first so people respect you. Because if it's on your territory, you will win. If it's their territory on going out for martinis and who knows who and how many years, you'd be like, you will lose that game.
Yeah.
So you play the game on your field where you win. Then if, just to reinforce this, you also want to have authority because what does a hippo do? Hippos look at what, because it's like status oriented. So they'll look at what the other bigger attorneys are doing and they'll want to do that too. So say, okay, for social media advertising, and this is what Ali Awad is doing, right? Ali Awad is the #1 social media attorney. Guess who coaches Ali Awad?
I don't know who.
Me. And then there's a mastermind called PILMA. And a lot of lawyers are in PILMA and they like Ken Hardison and for all the reasons about Ken Hardison. And who do you think is doing the SEO and social media for Ken Hardison? And PILMA.
You?
We are with his team.
Yeah.
And then we have the TikTok lawyer, Ethan Ostroff. And the guy's generating hundreds of cases just off of TikTok. Personal injury cases, mass tort cases. Guess who coaches him?
Dennis Yu.
Okay. And what kind of framework? Just wild guess, Braden. What kind of framework do you think we're applying in each of these organizations?
MAA, a logical one.
That's right. That's right. So you could say, this is the model that these other guys are using. So instead of Braden, who's his first year doing digital marketing as a marketing specialist, instead of young Braden saying it, you're saying, hey, Hippo, this is what PILMA and Ali Awad and Ethan Ostroff and other attorneys are using. And these guys are many times bigger than Casey accident attorneys. You want to be like those guys, don't you?
Yeah.
So if you're using the very thing that appeals to hippos. Hippos are always the appeal to authority. You're still doing the appeal to just logical reasoning, critical thinking, problem solving, but you're also weaving in the appeal to authority at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a multifaceted argument. It's lovely. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. And a lot of companies, huge companies like a Quiznos or California Pizza Kitchen or whatever, they'll bring us in for consulting. And their head of analytics, their head of PPC, their head of social media, their CMO or whatever will already have the thing that they're trying to push through, but maybe they feel like they don't have enough respect, or maybe they aren't being respected because the CEO talked to Gary Vaynerchuk and Gary Vaynerchuk said this one thing. And then they bring someone in like me for more firepower. And it's funny because I'll look at this stuff and I'll say, Braden, what you're saying seems to make a lot of sense. And they'll say, I know, but Gary Vaynerchuk told the CEO this. And now the CEO doesn't want to do our thing because Gary Vaynerchuk said this other thing. Oh, first off, let's figure out what did Gary Vaynerchuk actually say. Let's figure out what your goal is. And Gary Vaynerchuk is going to give you advice on how to get more attention. That may or may not be what you're trying to do. Because Gary Vaynerchuk is all about attention. He's very clear about that. And maybe it is top of funnel. Maybe we do need to do some of the things that he's saying. But this other thing that you're saying, Gary Vaynerchuk doesn't know about your whole business and all the details. He's not doing analysis on the business. Gary Vaynerchuk's giving his off the cuff thought.
Yeah.
But now we're like, I'm actually looking at all the data. Our recommendations are very specific, not just what Gary Vaynerchuk thought in 10 seconds of some idea.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you, Dennis.
Do you feel you got value, Mr. Braden?
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
What would you say to other people about what is MAA and why is that important? Because there's a lot of people in your situation where they're working really hard. They're really smart. They're like you. They have 8 years of experience doing technical things, but they have trouble when they run up against the big boss because the big boss has a lot of experience and they're the owner or powerful. The big boss has all these other friends that are super well known, or like, how can I possibly ever give a recommendation when the big boss's friends are saying this and this? So based on how would you explain MAA and why this is an important model that's worth learning?
MAA is the equalizer, right? It makes it so that data and logic becomes the rules of the game, and it allows you to make decisions that will actually improve your business, actually improve systems and operations based off of the analysis of metrics to take the right action, MAA. And it's lovely.
Now you feel that you can implement this. Is there anything you need from me to be able to implement this?
I think a lot of the work is on me. Like, I got to get the data. I got to present that it's important. I got to show that whoever has the information, whoever has the metrics and the analysis is really the one that's in charge. And I got to put in a request to be the director of analytics.
Yeah, there you go. I think you're going to do super well. I can't wait to see what happens. You have me in your corner too. I'm your ace up the sleeve if you want to pull in the big gun.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Dennis.
Awesome. Do I have your permission to take snippets of this and turn it into an article and other sorts of things to teach other people?
For sure. Definitely.
Awesome. Cool. It was good. I enjoyed this. Thanks for taking time on the weekend too. That shows that you're dedicated. It shows you really care, because most kinds of employees, I'm not putting you in the employee bucket, but most employees, they're not going to take their personal time to invest in. How many employees do you know that are going to take the weekends to try to help their company grow?
Yeah.
So
not many.
This is really good because you're investing in your career. You're investing in your power and your knowledge. And this is the kind of thing that distinguishes people who are super successful in their career years down the road versus someone who's they move from marketing specialist to marketing manager 5 years later, and which is great. But I think you have much, much bigger things in store for you.
Thanks, Dennis. That's the goal. Like, the reason I'm here is not necessarily because I want to take all this information and give it back to Casey. Information training, it increases my value. And while I am an employee, I can provide more value to my employers now. But at the end of the day, I want to be my own boss, and I want to be the most valuable tool I can be.
Can I say something that may seem offensive?
Go ahead.
What do you think the likelihood is that, based on statistics of how often people move in their career, that you're still going to be at KC Accident Attorneys in 5 years? And not to say you're not disloyal, not to say you're not working hard, but what's the likelihood you'll still be there in 5 years based on U.S. Census data?
I don't know the U.S. Census data, but
based on just general job data,
it's probably pretty high. I don't think people switch jobs very often.
There's a high probability you won't be at this firm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The average person who is in professional services, like white collar stuff, goes through 7 different career changes in their career. And that number is increasing because of COVID, because now you have this multi-work situation where you might be as an employee in Casey Accident Attorneys, but you might be doing consulting on the side with their permission, of course. You might be speaking at a conference. You might release a book. And why wouldn't they want you to have a book out there? Because then that makes them look better and it builds your industry connections and makes you more valuable. So there's a high likelihood that you will go through, if you're not average, but you will probably go through 6 or 7 different career changes, which include owning a business, selling a business, having partnerships in other businesses, building your brand, especially in digital. In digital, the number's even higher. Do you know what the average tenure is of a CMO?
No.
2 years.
Wow.
Look it up. The average CMO lasts for 2 years. And in some cases, it's 18 months.
That's incredible.
Why do you think that is?
Probably tons of reasons. And that's the problem. That's why, is because if you want to go and do your own thing, or somebody else comes to you and says, hey, we see what you're doing there and we love it and we want you to be a part of our team. Yep. There's so many things competing for high level people's time and attention.
So do you think the kinds of marketing things we're doing today are going to be, how similar are they going to be with how things are going to be in 5 years?
Marketing is always evolving, right?
Yeah, it's going to take a different skill set. Organizationally, things have to change. And people who are really good, they're in high demand. And not that you would switch jobs because someone else will pay you twice as much, but you will be worth twice as much every single year. So just be ready for that and be ready to be rewarded for that.
I will. Thanks, Dennis.
And then just remember me along the way. That's all I ask.
Yeah, I could never. I've always had a life goal that I want to rent a cruise ship and invite everybody who's ever had a positive impact on my life to go on a cruise with me. And
I've never been on a cruise before.
I'd love to have you there.
Invite me.
I don't know how much cruise ships are going for rent right now, but they just did it on The Bachelorette. They rented the whole cruise ship for their season. So
you can rent parts of a cruise ship. One of my friends has an event called the Marketer's Cruise, and he'll have 200 or 300 people, and they'll each pay like a couple $1,000. So it's not that hard to actually organize. And we organize events too. So when you're ready, we can do that.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome, Braden. Pleasure spending time with you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and teach me.